everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. I am starting a brand new project today that I am very excited about. It's kind of been on my to make list for a while now, and that is I'm making myself a new winter coat. So I have a winter coat that I made myself back in 2018, early 2018, and I love it to pieces. I wear it like literally every day, but that's the thing. I wear it every day and it's now been almost 5 years since I made that coat. So it is time for a new coat that I can like trade out with that coat. Also taking some of the stuff that I learned while making that coat and hopefully applying it to this coat. And I'm very excited about the pattern that I'm going to be using. It is McCalls 8123. It is this one, the Angela Clayton kind of like Victorian coat pattern. Except that I am going to make mine more functional. So I am going to be making a lot of changes to this pattern. Number one, I don't need a floor length coat. That is not practical for me at all. I need an like knee length-ish, maybe even just above the knee. I'll have to see where my old one hits because I really do like where it hits, and I think that it is somewhere right around my knees. And yes, I'm wearing my new dress that I showed you guys how to make in the last video. So anyway, this is the pattern that I'm using, but besides the length, I'm also going to change some things around the neckline collar region because this coat has a really wide, nice and pretty collar, but it only closes to about here, and I get a cold neck in the winter, so I want the option to be able to close it all the way up to the top of my neck. So I am going to be changing the neckline some, and also I'm going to add a hood because I like a hood. So I don't know if I'm going to keep this collar at all, to be honest, because I'm changing so much about the neckline. I think what I'm going to do is make my neckline pretty similar to my old coat, where it'll like close up all the way if I want it to, and otherwise if I don't want it to, the facing will still be wool, and when it's open it will just look like the wool here on the collar, and then it'll have the coat. I am toying with the idea of adding some sort of a like faux fur trim to the hood, but that's probably impractical. But the fabric that I'm going to be using is this gorgeous red wool that I have so much of and I have been hoarding for a couple of years now. I got this when fabric.com had their like accidental wool sale, as in they listed bolts of wool for a per yard price and then had to honor it. So I got 8 yards of wool for something stupid cheap. I forget what it was, but it was like, I want to say $20. Like, it was stupid cheap, and there was a huge run on it until they realized their mistake. And so I have this and I have 2 other colors. This is the same wool that I made my Daniel Deronda cosplay out of earlier this year, and coincidentally it is also the same pattern that I kind of used for my base. So I do still need to make a mock-up though, because that was over a corset and I made tons and tons of changes to that pattern. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is making a mock-up of this with my new neckline changes. So let's go ahead and dive in. So a couple of other things that I almost forgot to mention. One, I am going to have to change this pattern for size as well, because this pattern goes up to a pattern size 22. It is not very size inclusive, as per all of the Angela Clayton patterns I've noticed, unfortunately. I don't blame her, it's probably a McCalls thing, but it is kind of annoying. But anyway, normally the pattern dimensions, like the finished garment dimensions that are listed on this pattern, would actually be large enough for my sizes. But because this is a coat and it is meant to go over sweaters and other types of bulky garments, it's not going to work. So it has a bust of 50.5 and a waist of 41.5 according to the finished pattern, and that is the ease that I would want of like basically just a regular dress. And well, the bust would be too big, but the waist is like pretty close to just my waist measurement, and yeah, I need it to be a lot larger. So I am going to have to increase the size pretty significantly. I have realized, like, I'm not sure when I made my other coat how much I sized it up, because I do have the pattern that was based on, which was Simplicity 8262, and that only goes up to a 49-inch bust, so I clearly had to size it up significantly since that is half an inch larger than my regular bust measurement. So yeah, I don't remember though if I like just moved up a couple sizes or if I did little tweaks or whatever, because I didn't do enough keeping track of things. Like, you know, I didn't vlog or anything then. I just had a little bit of a blog, and I don't think I wrote this sort of stuff down in it. So anyway, that is one of the changes that I have to make, is changing it to size. The other thing that I forgot to mention is lining. So I grabbed out a few options, but I don't know if I have enough of any of these to actually make them work. The options that I have, this is the Bemberg rayon lining that I used for my last coat. I really doubt that I have enough of this, but if I do, this is my first choice. And then I also have both of these, which I can hopefully get more of because they're both from Joann's. And this one is just navy matte satin. This is what I used for the lining for my Samantha cloak earlier this year. And then this is just red matte satin. I don't remember what this was left over from. I want to say a Snow White cape, possibly. So I don't know if either of those have enough in them, but I figured like a red lining might be fun. Navy's a decent contrast. And if none of those work, then I'll go to Joann's and get something else. So the other thing that I figured that I would do here is put on my old coat, which is this one right here, and check at like how long the length is and what needs to be fixed. I think you can notice right off the bat one of the things that is maybe an issue with this coat, which is I'm pretty sure over time it has stretched along the sides, which are probably cut on the bias, so that the sides are longer than the front. You can see it like dip up that way. I like the length of the sides better, so that is what I'm going to emulate or attempt to emulate with this pattern. What I want to do with these is like hold up the waistline, for example, and see where that hits with the hem. And this actually appears to be a lot longer, just the top half of this front pattern, than my old coat. I think I am going to stick more with the old coat length though and shorten that up a bit. And then I have to go around from each pattern piece and make sure that like the upper half is the same, because the way this pattern works is that you add like the 1A, 2A section on the bottom, but I don't know if the break point is at the same level all the way around or if it's like random depending on what fit on the paper. So I have to go through and check that, because in general, if it's going to be all the same as this one, I am actually going to shorten these pattern pieces a little bit, just because, yeah, it would be too long otherwise. So naturally, the extensions are not the same length. That's going to make things a lot more annoying to do, considering the one like slash mark, hash mark, whatever you call those, you know, to match up your pattern pieces. It's way, way up the garment. It's way up here, like above the lengthen and shorten section even, which I am going to do. I have to lengthen the body, at least in the front, by 1 inch because the shoulder seam was not hitting my shoulder. And then, yeah, I want to shorten this. And on the front, I've realized that I want to use the join line to be like the cut. But of course, that is not actually the same place as this join line, so that's annoying. So I've cut out the majority of the pieces for the mock-up for the coat. This was fabric that I showed you guys in my haul. I got this at the thrift store, but it's cotton sateen. So like, if this works, I'm just gonna use this as my lining. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna have to figure out new things because I used all of it. So the one piece that doesn't get cut out of this is the very front piece, because the front piece is, you actually like cut 4 of them instead of 2 of them out of the regular fabric, because it acts as like the self-facing in a way. So that way, like if you turn back the collar area, the button front area, like up in the neckline, you're gonna see the red wool as opposed to floral or what have you. And same with like if you don't button it all the way, you're still gonna see the red wool. A lot of patterns for coat patterns, I feel like for commercial, they're gonna have like a smaller, just front facing. This one literally just cuts the full front piece out of the outer fabric. I don't love that idea, to be perfectly honest, but it doesn't bother me enough that I'm going to try and change it. Also, the fact that I don't have any more of that floral fabric. So right now, what I'm trying to figure out how to do is cut out that front piece, considering I'm changing the neckline and the collar. Because this pattern piece right here, the front piece, this part that swings up right here, this is actually the collar that comes around, and this is the center back. So like, it's this big round thing like you see on the pattern envelope right here, and then the shoulder seam is right here, but you only get half of it because the other half is the collar that gets turned back. So the center front, which is not a fold, but the center front is this line right here. Hopefully you can see that. So basically this gets folded, and then that gets folded, and then that goes down in the back, and we're taking a flat object and making it 3D. But I don't need this collar in the back because I'm going to put in a hood, but I'm not going to have this big rounded collar. And again, I'm not going to have it start low here and be the big rounded collar from the front into the back. So that's what's happening here, is it's swinging out to become that collar, and I don't need that. So I think what I'm just going to do here, and we'll see if this works, is I am just going to take this straight edge for the center front, go all the way up with it until the shoulder, and then come all the way over here. Now I know that's probably not correct because obviously you need some kind of neckline that dips down. So really, like, it would be a line here, but then a little like quarter circle right there. But since I don't know exactly where that needs to be, I'm gonna cut it straight first, and then I will cut that away like once I go to try it on, probably, because wherever it hits my neck, obviously it can't be there. So yeah, that's my plan. The other thing that I'm doing with this mock-up, since this front piece is literally mock-up, I'm not cutting into wool yet, I am cutting this out in cotton, and my cotton is not this full length down here. So, and in fact, I'm going to add 1 inch to the bottom of this pattern piece, and I have 1 inch that's added into the middle here for the upper torso. So I'm not going to mock up the full thing. I'm just going to mock it up for as low as I can go, and then I'll add more to the wool since I just don't need it in the cotton. This fabric's going to get wasted. So yeah, let's figure this out. All right, I have the coat mock-up on, and there's a few major areas besides the neckline, of course, that I think need attention. So for one thing, the shoulders are really wide. So I definitely need to narrow the shoulders a little bit because a seam like out here, even for a coat, that's not how I want it. For two, I don't think you can tell this because I think it's getting lost in the pattern, but there's a really, really weird dart on this side front piece here, and like, it curves in really in a short amount. So basically like the widest part of the dart is like here, and then the narrowest part is like here. Like, it's super short. It's just a couple inches that it curves in, and so it's being very strange and pointy off to the side. So obviously that needs a lot of attention. One of the biggest things that I'm worried about if I can recut on these fabrics is that the back is too long. So these pleats and stuff, they should be here. So I did kind of worry about this because I lengthened all of it all the way around by 1 inch, because when I was holding up all of the pieces to myself, they all looked short. However, my normal pattern lengthening method is to lengthen the front and not the back because of my sway back. And that is what I should have done with this pattern as well. So I'm really going to have to see if there is a way for me to move this up. The thing with this pattern is that it has all of these pleats down here. Obviously I can't start the pleats higher because of where they're cut. So it would have to be brought up like from the neck or something like that, like from the upper portion, which might be possible. I'm hoping it will be possible. The arm size do feel like they have some room where I could move it up a little bit, especially in the back. And also it is a little too big everywhere. I don't necessarily mind that because it is a coat. And I think that once the back waist is sitting where it's supposed to, that it will look more flattering, because right now obviously it doesn't really come in that well at the middle, which is what I want. I want it to like nip in at the waist. So that's the biggest thing, is moving it up. I do wonder if it really has enough flare in the front. It's got all of this flare in the back because of the pleats, but the front is like not super flared. I think I kind of probably wanted a little bit more flare. But yeah, let's go ahead and see if I can fix those issues and see what it looks like then. Oh, and obviously, like I mentioned, I do have to cut the neckline down to actually, you know, contain a neck. Okay, so here's my plan. First off, I made a little mark right here. This is where that dart needs to come up to. The back, I'm going to undo this seam and take 1 inch out of like the length of the back here. I will need to lower the neckline in the back as well. I'll probably just do it by 1 inch, though I might do it by a 1/2 inch to start, because it almost seemed like the back would be a little bit low to connect a hood to. So I might actually want a little bit more in the back of the neck at least. But the other thing is that all of that extra width around the middle, it's all in the back. Like, it's all that the back is too large. The side seams are hitting where they're supposed to. So I definitely need to take in some of these back seams pretty significantly as well. I want to take in probably these two, since I'm like grabbing them and it feels like they are the two that are the largest. So I'll probably take in those seams and we'll see where we hit. So I took the back up 1 inch in the shoulders, like I said, but I do still feel like I'm actually having to like lift the back into where the pleats should sit on me, which is still giving me excess back here. So I think I need to take more up out of there. It is definitely also still big. I haven't fixed the front darts yet, but it is definitely still too big, even though I've actually now taken 2 inches out of the back, but only at the waist. And I'm wondering if maybe I need some of that to be not just at the waist, because I think I'm getting like kind of wrinkles all over. And obviously this is a coat. This is not supposed to be like fitted. I need to be able to put a sweater on and a scarf on. I am wearing a Christmas sweater vest, but I don't have a scarf. This is a pretty thin sweater, and then it's just like a long sleeve tee. So I do want to have some room under there, but not this much room. So there's definitely still more tweaking that I have to do to the back. I have a few fitting updates now. First off, I've done the darts up here, and I think that the fronts are fitting so much better. However, one thing that I did notice is that it is actually not large enough around the neck. Do you see this? So right now I have it marked with a pink line right here and the fold here, which originally had another pink line, where the like center should be. It won't fold like that quite once I have it in the wool, but that's where the center should be. And as you can see, even though I have cut down the neckline some, I do need to cut it down more, but also it just doesn't get there at all. I mean, it just completely doesn't get there. Now, I do think that I also maybe need to cut the neckline down a little bit more in the back, but I took another inch off of the length of the back, and I think that the length is now pretty good. However, although I've taken it in at the waist, I took it in even more at the waist. In fact, I took probably another 1.5 inches out of the waist, but I haven't taken any out of like here, and I think that's where it's really too large. So some of those need to get tapered up farther because there's just too much around the back. But otherwise, I think that we're pretty close. Like, there's still definitely room in the waist, which is good. There's room in the bust, which is good. Generally, this will be worn open. I don't usually button up my coat all the way to the top unless it's really cold, but I need it to obviously fit. So there's got to be more added here at the neck, which is so ironic to me because I always have to take things in up here, but now I need to add it to the neck. So yeah, something has to get figured out there. I have not yet taken in the shoulders because I was messing with the height of the back. So I am going to narrow these shoulders out some here, and then yeah, take some of the width out of the back up here. I think I have fixed all of my fit issues now, other than the fact that I do probably need to cut down the neckline just a little bit more. I realized, like, It's not that it's too small, it's just that I hadn't cut it down enough. So I've put some little slashes in here, but it's not quite enough for the very top. I cut up the shoulders just a little bit, really just on this front piece. The back one was pretty fine, I think, and like under the arms feels great. And then I took in 2 of the seams in the middle back. Basically, where I had taken it in at the waist, I just continued that taper up until like kind of the upper back. So I had taken it in on the waist on the like side back and middle back seams, and so now I've just continued that up. But yeah, everything else seems really quite good now. So I'm gonna double check like with my front length, because remember I didn't actually cut the front all the way. I am going to just make a note of how much that needs to be extended by, and then I have the lovely task of taking all of this apart and marking my patterns with the adjustments. I might make full other patterns because I did obviously add length to like the fronts, so I'm not gonna be able to just copy my changes onto like the tissue paper patterns here. But I also don't want to just make, you know, the whole, that's just a lot of paper to make the whole pattern. So we'll see what I decide to do as far as copying that, because I would like to hold on to this just in case I want to make coats in the future. I think that'd be handy. But yeah, otherwise we have our good fit now. So I can go ahead and once I've gotten that taken apart and marked on paper, I can cut out my wool. It's crazy how different some of these pieces wound up being, because like lining it up here, this is the middle back piece, lining it up here, you can see that I wound up chopping off a whole bunch of the top section here, and then I did actually still get lengthened here though, because the skirt doesn't start till down here. And so I've drawn green lines now on like where I need it. I actually wound up curving in the waist a little bit more, and then I think because of like just I don't know how I had positioned this. Also, I did cut this fabric, this piece, I think specifically slightly biasy because I needed to fit it in the fabric, but you can see like the skirt swung out very differently than it was on there. So I'm not worried about marking this skirt portion on there because I'm sure that this swing of the skirt, like the pattern, would have worked just fine. But again, I have marked all of the bodice changes onto this pattern so that I can use that again. So I'm partway through cutting out the wool for the coat now, and something just occurred to me. So I went and I took apart every single piece of the coat, like the mock-up of the coat. I took them all apart, I undid the darts on the 2 front pieces, and then like I compared piece to piece, and my reasoning for that was so that I could serge around all of the outside edges of all of the pieces, so they don't fray, because this is cotton sateen. Cotton sateen always frays. This one's not terrible, but it definitely does still fray. And so I was just thinking while cutting out the wool that like, oh, okay, this wool doesn't fray. I don't have to serge it. That's great. And then I was like, oh, well, I mean, even still, the seams would be like inside the lining. So, you know, I'm not going to see it anyway. And then it dawned on me, the seams for the sateen are also going to be inside the lining because this is bag lined, not flat lined. Which means I didn't have to take it all apart because I don't necessarily need to serge all of them if they're all going to be inside. I mean, like I still could, you know, I don't know if it would add any life to the coat or not. Now that I have taken them all apart, I feel like I might as well because it will have given me a reason for taking them all apart, but that was stupid. I did not need to spend all of that time. It took me like 2 full hours just to seam rip all of the pieces of the lining. So yeah, there's that. Just figured I'd share. I'm gonna go back to cutting everything out now. So as I was literally about to sew up the side seam of the jacket, I already have it pinned and everything on this side, I realized that I forgot to transfer the markings from my mock-up to the like outer for the pockets. And of course, I also forgot that I had made those markings and I made them in like iron off friction pen, and then I ironed it off of there. So I have this on right now with the shoulders done up, but not the side seams, so that I can see where I need to put the pockets in the side seams. I'm just going to do them as inseam pockets. They're going to go in like the very side seam. And one thing about my blue coat is that the pockets really are too far down. Like I can extend this all the way down and barely reach the bottom of the pocket. So I want to put these a little bit higher up so that I can access them like hip height and put my hand all the way in. And I want them to be nice and big pockets so I can keep my hands nice and cozy. I'm trying to decide right now if I want to make the pockets out of wool, which to me means that maybe they would be, I don't know, less durable, but they'd be really soft and cozy, versus like if I make them out of matte satin, they're gonna be cold. And I feel like the soft and cozy is better. So I think I might just go ahead and make wool pockets because I don't have any red cotton, which would be my other choice. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna make the pockets out of wool. Hopefully they won't be too bulky. You were meowing. Oh, you're so cold. She's so cold. She must have been outside. She's very chilly. You're gonna get fur all over my coat that's not even done being made. Uh-oh. You want out? Okay, bye. Squish that face. Squish it. Squish the face. I don't know how well you can see this red on red, but I just freehanded a pocket shape, making sure like my hand would fit in it nicely and therefore also my phone would fit in it nicely. So this is the pocket. I have a green pin that is pinned in place where the pocket is going to start, and I am going to cut out 2 more of these now for the other side and then sew them in to each of the side seams before doing up the rest of the side seam. So I know it's going to be impossible to get this all in frame, but I just wanted to try and show you the hem because it is still looking uneven. Like the back looks a lot lower. Now granted, I haven't done anything with the hem yet. I literally just finished sewing together the seams of the coat, but I did find that interesting. Part of me wonders if that has anything to do with the fact that A, the back of the dress has a lot more weight to it because it has all those pleats, and B, I did actually hang the back section. So it was like center back, middle back, side back sections all sewn together. I just hadn't done the side seams yet. I hung that whole section on the dress form last night for, I guess, probably about 16, no more than that, like 18 hours, something like that. Basically from about like 1 this morning to about like 6 p.m. So yeah, I don't know if that has something to do with it. I did not hang the fronts. I just like draped the fronts over the dress form. Like you see this piece here, that's the facing piece. But yeah, I do wonder about that. So I'll have to figure that out when it comes to the hem. However, that is going to be in next week's video. Unfortunately, I just did not get as much done on this as I wanted to or as I hoped to this week between understudy rehearsals, Thanksgiving, and hanging up all of my Christmas decorations, which I can show you right here. It took quite a bit of time out of my sewing time. So this is where we're at. It kind of looks like a coat because I'm wearing a red sweater, but yeah, next week you will see sleeves added, the cape added, and then like the lining assembled and put in, and the buttons and buttonholes and all that sort of stuff. So right now we've got pretty good base right here. I do worry that I made the openings of the pockets a little bit small, but that is an easy thing to fix. So yeah, we've got a really nice red wool coat that I think is going to be super nice and warm and a good sub for my blue, but I will be finishing it next week. So hopefully you enjoyed this video so far. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, you do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Mirage, and Laura. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!